Okay, and I'll just go ahead and start letting people in. Mute myself. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. As you're joining, I'll just let you get your audio set up and all of that so you're set. Of course, you can mute yourself while we're doing the panel, and I'm going to give maybe just a few more minutes to make two minutes to let people join us so that we give a little grace in the starting time. But we are recording, and we'll have the full recording for anyone who would like to listen later, and for anyone that you want to share this with after the fact as well. So I'm going to mute myself for a couple minutes, and then I'll jump back on and introduce myself and the program. Okay, I think that's our 2 minutes. So let's get started, and then people can join us as they are able to. We had several more people registered, so I'm hoping they can join us as we get started. But just to start us off today, my name is Melinda Bowen. I am the co-president of the Utah Center for Legal Inclusion, and you'll get to hear from my trustee partner, Kristen Olson, who is also our co-president at UCLI. And she and her husband are going to be talking about their experience along with the rest of our panelists. And I'm so excited for this event today, and I hope you all find it very valuable. For a while, we've been trying to think of some things that we could do to provide a support to men and women, frankly, who are considering going to law school after having done other things with their life in between their undergrad, or who may be going to their undergrad later in life. Really, the idea, as the event title suggests, is a relaunch, right? So the launch into the legal profession. Whatever your past has been, whether it's been staying at home with kids or another career, or any number of things, if you're considering coming to law school at whatever phase and stage of life you may be in, we're hoping that we can provide some ideas and strategies and resources for all of you through this event and through continuing support. So our panelists today are going to be introduced by our moderator, Sharice Bakalski, in just a minute, but they each have a very unique and interesting story of how they came to the law and came to their legal careers. And I love hearing people's stories, and I love each of their stories, so I hope that you each appreciate them as well. But they are going to hopefully highlight that we each have our own path and our own journey as we come to the law. I'm an attorney as well. I had a more traditional path, but we each have our own journeys, and there's different strategies and resources available to each of us as we go about that journey. So hopefully this event will prove useful in that respect. I just also want to encourage each of you to fill out the survey, which will be posted in the chat later, so we can know as an organization, the Utah Center for Legal Inclusion, or UCLI, as an organization, we want to support you, as I said, as we move forward past this event. And so if you could fill out the survey that's posted in the chat in a moment, we will take your feedback, and we would love to know what we can do to provide the help that we can as you move along your path. The format for the event will be a panel. As I said, Sharice Bukowski will be our moderator, and she's going to introduce herself, and then the panelists will introduce themselves as well. They're going to each handle a question that we pose to them, but throughout, we would love it if you have questions. Please post them in the chat. We want this to be as interactive and participatory as possible. So please post your questions in the chat. And Caitlin Piper, our executive director at UCLI, is going to be monitoring those, and she'll help us know if we've reached all the questions, hopefully. And I also want to say, I want to give a special shout out to Caitlin. This was very much her brainchild, and I'm really excited for this event to be happening. So thank you to her for her hard work in making this happen. I think that is all, but I am going to turn it over to Sharice Bukowski, who is a member of a female law firm that does appellate work, the Appellate Group. And Sharice has a really interesting story that I'm excited she's going to share with you, but she got her JD from BYU along with two masters, it looks like, and her bachelor's from Cal State San Marcos. She's also done a couple of clerkships at the Utah Supreme Court and the Utah Court of Appeals. And she does many, many CLE, which is continuing legal education presentations in various areas. She's very knowledgeable and a great appellate practitioner. We're really lucky to have Sharice with us, and I'm excited to hear her story and hear from the rest of our panelists. So with that, I'll turn it to Sharice.
Thanks, Melinda. I'm just going to do a real quick introduction so that everybody knows kind of who you're going to get to hear from. We've got myself. I went to law school at the age of 30 after being in school for a while. I had kind of a rocky family background like many of us. And my college education took forever. I was working multiple jobs going through, and in fact, even graduated from high school while I was in college, because that was what my teenage years looked like. So, you know, I'm loving where I'm at right now. I have a family, but I started fertility treatments while I was in law school in my 30s and had to deal with that while I was going to school. So that's, you know, I'll get into all of that a little bit later. We've got Pam Schools. Pam was a divorced mom of a few kids, went back to school after getting divorced to get her bachelor's degree, and at age 50 went to law school and is just so excited about entering that phase of her life. Suzette Rasmussen went to law school after being a stay-at-home mom, and had 8 children when she started as a 1L. Zakiyah Richardson attended law school when she was younger. She took the bar, and then she took a 5-year break before turning back to her legal degree to start her career. Kristen Olson and Marshall Thompson attended law school together in their 30s after they had kids, and Marshall is a veteran. Haiti Achikar went to law school in her 30s as well. She was a single mom of 2 young kids and experienced financial stress as a result, and lots of childcare issues being a single mom. And then that is where we're at. So these are all lots of people. We've got varied experiences. And so we hope that you will put your questions in the chat, and we have left an entire half hour at the end to be able to have a discussion with everyone. But I will start by just sharing a couple of minutes of my personal journey. Like I said, I came from a background where I was not able to go to high school. And so I started at a community college when I was 17 years old. And I just kind of plunked away at classes while I was working like 2 full-time jobs. And it took me a long time to get through everything. Finally, when I got married, my husband's family supported me, and then I was able to finish everything. And the monkey on my back was the fact that I just never graduated from high school, which just made me so upset because everybody that I knew had graduated from high school, and it really bugged me. And so while I was in college, I went back to night school. I did adult school, night school, high school. And just plunked away at those classes at the same time. And, I was telling my husband the other day, since I graduated from high school, I've never thought about it since, but I thought about it every day, all day long until I did. So I'm so glad that I did that and I got that crossed off my list. So I would just encourage you, if you've got something like that, that's just hammering the back of your mind, just take care of it and move on with your life. It's so good to close those chapters of your life that are left open due to whether it's your fault or someone else's fault. Just kind of close and make peace with those things so that you can focus your attention on becoming who you can become. So then I did a master's degree. I was doing another master's degree at the same time as I was in law school because I fell in love with that discipline as well and just couldn't give it up. And so, and then I had been married for a few years and realized that I wasn't getting pregnant. And so I decided to start fertility treatments. And so I was doing all of that in law school. But the thing that I want to focus on is that you can have an amazing legal career while you have all of that stuff going on, regardless of what you do in law school. When I went to law school, I decided that my goals were to try to become a better person, to become a better wife, to become a better friend. And those were the things that I focused on in law school. And I really wanted to not lose my soul to the study of law. Like it seemed like so many spouses of law students had horror stories about who their spouse became during law school. And so I just really wanted to stay away from anything like that. And so I set really strict boundaries on my studies. So instead of I was not the person there before everyone else and after everybody else. And I was not the person there on the weekends. And I was probably watching movies with my husband every single night during law school. And just, mountain biking, rock climbing, enjoying myself. And so that when I graduated, I didn't feel like, I felt like I was a better person than when I began. And I really just, I'm so glad that that's the way I did things and that I didn't sacrifice years of my personal development for law school. And I think that you can do that and go to law school and become a better person at the same time as learning how to think like a lawyer, which is the purpose of law school. And doing all the things, I did, I think 4 externships my 3L year while I had a newborn that I was breastfeeding. And so you can do all the things. It was very busy, but I did it. And you can do the things that you want to do. And you can do them well. I mean, it's just, there are no limits to what you can do. In fact, I think when you're pushed, you can possibly even do better than if you have nothing else going on. So that's my story. And now we're going to move on to Heidi's story. So we're going to talk to Heidi first, and then Pam, then Zakiyah, then Kristen and Marshall, and then Suzette. And then we're going to open it up to all of the questions that come in. So Heidi, I'm so glad that you're here today. Heidi and I we were law school students together. And so I've known Heidi for a while, and she really made law school a fun place to be. She was kind of the life of the party, and we had lots of late nights over at Heidi's house. So I'm really grateful for that. But here are the questions that I've got for you. First, in what ways were you an unconventional law student, and what challenges did this bring?
I was unconventional in so many ways. I'm an immigrant. English is not even my first language, right? I didn't know any lawyers. I grew up in an inner city. I grew up in the Bronx in New York. It wasn't exactly a place where, we were being encouraged to pursue our dreams. I graduated college when I was 23, but then I had 2 kids. My first a month after college graduation, and then another one 4 years later. So I wanted to be home with my kids as long as I could. I was able to do that for a couple years. And then when I absolutely had to work with my bachelor's in English, I taught middle school. So by the time I finally started law school, I had been a middle school teacher and I was a single mom, and I was 31. So what were the challenges? All of them.
You mentioned financial stress and childcare. I cannot even, and then raising your kids alone. I mean, I can imagine how difficult that would have been.
So that's an interesting question, right? About these stresses that we face, the financial stresses. And it's like, well, it's also really stressful being a single parent with a bachelor's degree, right? My sort of belief was that it was going to be stress now or stress later, or rather stress now or stress for the long term. And it's hard to make ends meet as a single parent. It's hard to make a good living with a bachelor's degree, honestly. And so I made sacrifices and I made compromises, and I relied on my community, right? So, gosh, sacrifices, right? Like I lived as frugally as I could. As far as childcare is concerned, I sacrificed sleep. I sacrificed, you make all sorts of sacrifices that I think make as a parent anyway. But I think the reality of this, right, is if you're going to pursue this as a parent, as a single parent, or as a parent, or just as a person who has to support yourself, right? I had to take on debt to go to law school, and that's a compromise that I had to make. And I also sort of had to make peace with my limitations, right? So my first year of law school, I had a preschooler, so I had to spend a lot on childcare that year. But all 3 years of law school, I left school when my kids were out of school. I didn't have any family in Utah. I went to law school here. And so I couldn't stay late and study 12-hour days, right? That was okay, right? I was pursuing my dream the way that as best as I could. And that meant that I left right after school to go be home with my kids. And then I studied when they were in bed. After bath and bedtime is when I did the rest of my studying. And then also, like, you rely on your community, right? I didn't have family here, but I had a lot of friends, and even my law school community who was really supportive. And I have to say that I also feel like my law school was very accommodating. So I think choosing a law school that understands that that not all law students look the same, it was really key for me. There's a room in our law school where we could bring our kids in if they were sick, and we could watch our classes on a video, that kind of thing really did make a difference and saved me with that childcare stress, right?
Yeah, my husband started his MBA the last year of my law school program. And one of my teachers, I had a night class, and one of my teachers told me, you can bring your son. And so I would just bring him in his baby carrier, and he would just sit there next to me.
And I just want to make one more point on this issue of like the debt and the financial stuff. I did receive some scholarship, like some partial scholarships, but most of us have to incur debt to go to law school, right? There's no sugarcoating that, right? Like, I think that it's important to believe in your endeavor and in yourself. And I really did believe, like, I have to pursue this dream. This is something I need to do for myself. It's an investment like any other. It's just an investment in myself. And I knew that I would land on my feet, that I would be able to work hard, and that I was gonna give myself options to make a better living.
Mhm.
And so, you know, because it requires so many sacrifices and there is so much stress, it's important that you go in sort of with that in mind, right? Like, is this something that you really want to, is it worth it? Right. And for me, it really was all of it.
Yeah. So this question here, I feel like you just answered, but believing in yourself, did that help you to combat the self-doubt and discouragement? Or how did you deal with that while you were in law school?
I love this question. I think that how do we overcome self-doubt and discouragement? I think that one of the benefits of being an older law student is that you understand that self-doubt and discouragement is just a part of the human condition. And you've likely already faced some of those challenges in your life, right? You don't get to, if you're in the workforce, if you've been raising children, if you've been an adult in the world, a teenager even, right? You understand that these are just conditions of being alive. So I guess I would say is that, first of all, life has prepared you for this, right? Like, I had a breakdown probably, I joke that I had a breakdown once a semester, and that's true. But the way I overcame that discouragement and that self-doubt is I took it one day at a time. Honestly, I took it one class at a time. I remember thinking, like, it's just 5 cases, right? That's it. I don't need to worry about the whole world. Right now, I just need to worry about these 5 cases. And that's literally one day at a time. And I remember sitting at graduation, and I spoke at our graduation. I was like, did I actually take the classes? Did they make a mistake? Because like, it just felt like these tiny little deposits every day.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. And I think at least for me, that self-doubt and discouragement comes often from comparison or some sort of expectation. So when I tell you that I had to tap into my goals, why I was there daily, I mean that, right? Like, I knew why I was in law school. I was not there to get on a partnership track at a national law firm. I did not need to be in the top 10%. I focused on my strengths, which was to build relationships. So I was involved in like the leadership and things like that. And it's funny because even till this day, I have professors and classmates who refer clients to me because I know them. They're my friends. I have relationships with them. So I focused on my strengths and my goals.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you. I mean, there really is a place for everyone in the law. The belief that only the top 10% have a place in the law is it's just false. And so I love that you brought that up. Okay, we're gonna turn to Pam now. Pam, who I think, Pam, I'm gonna let you tell your story, but I think you're graduating right now. Is this true?
Yes, Friday. I'm so excited. Do I
Awesome.
look excited?
Yes, you look very ready to graduate. So I want you to talk a little bit about in what ways you would say your law school journey or your journey to law school was particularly unique or challenging.
I share all the sentiments that Heidi just shared with you as well. The whole aspect of my path to law school was definitely untraditional. Starting with my undergrad, because I aged out of the foster care system, I didn't have the ability to financially go off to law school like so many of my high school classmates were doing. And so instead I worked full time, went to school nights and weekends, and did that at my local community college until I got my associates and was able to get a better paying job. And still law was in the back of my mind. I wanted to do it, but honestly didn't know how to do it at that point. And so when I found myself also divorced with 2 little ones, and also having the same dream of wanting to provide better for them and better opportunities for us, I went back and did my undergrad again, nights and weekends. My kids and I spent many a night at the kitchen table doing homework together as I got through that period. And then was able to get a better paying job. Still could not give up the paying gig to dedicate 3 years to law school. So really didn't know that that dream was going to be possible, frankly. And then this series of events happened in our, I'm remarried, and there's series of events happened in our life with my husband's career opportunities that opened up this beautiful window that I would have 3 years, literally 3 years to dedicate to law school. And I am just thrilled to now be at the end of that journey and off on the next 20 years of my next professional gig.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the resources that helped you to survive as a single and low-income parent during that time?
Absolutely. And I share the same experience of having to sort of gather some troops around me to help with daycare or taking care of the little ones. Frankly, if their father and family friends hadn't been willing to spend, every Wednesday and Thursday night for 5 hours between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. with them, I could not have done night school or Saturdays when I had Saturday classes. That was really critical, but also financially. So I will share with you that I too have student debt. And by the way, there's a statistic that was released recently that something like more than 75% of student loan debt is held by women. And I think that's because we find ourselves in this situation where we're either on our own or divorced and wanting to provide better opportunities for ourselves. And I consider it an investment. And that's the way I look at it. I could invest in other things, or I could invest in my future opportunities so I can change the trajectory for my children as well. Particularly aging out of foster care system, because first of all, there's a stigma that comes with that anyway, right? There's very low expectations of those of us who are in that system. And I knew I was going to have to work really hard to give my children a different trajectory. And so I started tapping into as many financial resources as I could find. And one of those was employer reimbursement of education expenses. Didn't cover it all, but it helped. Also places like the VFW and some other military-based entities. If you have a family member who was in the military, there's some opportunities there for some small scholarships. But in particular with law school, the better your LSAT score is and your undergrad GPA happens to be, the more likely you are to get some financial aid through scholarship. And so I really encourage anyone considering going back or coming to law school, even if you feel like you're older and you're like, time's running out, I've got to get to law school now, take a little bit of time to prepare for the LSAT and do as well as you can on that to give yourself those additional financial opportunities with scholarship.
Yeah, that's really smart. And then next, what are some ways that you overcame pushback for being a non-traditional student?
So this has been an interesting journey. It came in places I didn't expect, and it did not come in the places I thought I would get pushback. So there were some family members and some friends in my circle. Everyone was really phenomenally excited for me, by the way, because, to pursue your dream at whatever age is worthy. And so I was really fortunate that I had a lot of cheerleaders through the last 3 years, getting me through law school. And keeping that goal in front of my eyes as well. Heidi, that's one of the things I was really focused on. But there were some who could not wrap their minds around the idea that someone at my age would change careers. I had a great career. I was very fortunate to work in corporate communications. I traveled the world. I worked with great companies and great people. And they could not understand why I would pursue this. And it's my dream and it's worthy to be pursued. And the fact that this opportunity opened up was exciting for me. And so what I did, honestly, was I started to put just a little bit of distance between me and the naysayers, because I knew what my goal was. And I knew that it was something that I could achieve and I would have a great, phenomenal career in law. And I did not need to hear naysayers at that point. The area that I thought I would get pushback and I didn't was from employers. I really expected to have to sort of fight to get opportunities because of my age. And it turns out they love the idea that you have life experience, whatever that might be. You'd be surprised at how much of what you've already done is translatable to what it is that we have to do in law, which is basically solve a tough problem, find the resources to resolve that problem, communicate that to our client, or in cases where we're in the courtroom, to a jury. And you'd be surprised at how many of your existing life skills, even whether that's through a career, raising your family, volunteering, those skills are all valuable to have. So I was very blessed. I've had great employment opportunities already. I've worked for Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office in the civil side for 3 years through law school, and learned phenomenal things from them. And I have an opportunity to join Ballard Spar's litigation team here in Salt Lake City. So very, very fortunate that the pushback didn't come from that aspect of this journey.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I love that. I love hearing that the pushback didn't come from future employers. So can you talk a little bit, we have maybe 3 minutes left for you to talk about what the interview process looks like, having taken a break. Did you get any pushback about that, you know?
So interestingly not. So two things, both times in my life where I had taken a break, as employers might call it, right, where there's that gap on your resume, and you have to explain that. In both instances, I was also pursuing education at the time, so that helped.
Yeah.
And one of the things through the interview process that I learned is that what they want to hear about is how you've been working to achieve a goal. At the end of the day, whether it's a professional goal, an educational goal, a family goal. And so the interview process was really sort of exciting to have the opportunity to talk about those things. And
Yeah.
employers on law in particular were not worried necessarily about the gap. They wanted to see that I had the energy and drive to do this, and what was sort of my focus in law school, what areas of law did I want to pursue? That's what we talked about.
Love it. That's awesome. Okay, thank you, Pam. Now we're going to hear from Zakiyah about her experience. Zakiyah, I'd love for you to share your story and hear about your path into the legal profession and about how it might be different from other attorneys around you now.
Absolutely. I actually I pulled up my resume. You know, probably all of us, we remove our dates, and they said 5 years from, so I'm like, is that right? You know, so it was, no, actually it was about 9 years after, or probably 10 years after law school, that 10-year hiatus before I came back. But I'll start.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's crazy. So I am a native New Yorker as well. Haiti, love it. I know we got to get together one day. I grew up in Harlem. I'm one of 5 children. Mom and dad were home, and that was quite unusual where I grew up, you know, and we were not, please. My dad always says, you know, don't you know middle class is just a, you know, a term, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Daddy, we're poor, you know, so I didn't grow up with a silver spoon or anything like that at all. I went to the University of Virginia undergrad, and then of all places, I started out in San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco, for law school for about a month, and then University of Texas at Austin gave me a little bit more money, and I just couldn't turn down money because I didn't have a lot of money myself. So I went there. They gave me a little bit more scholarship money, and I went to UT Austin, graduated from there. So right now we're talking about the traditional kid path, right? I did take a couple of years off between undergrad and law school to work as a legal assistant to try to build up my resume to get into a top 20 law school. And I thought I was set, right? You know, I went to law school and I was like, I don't like this so much. I think I want to really go into business. And I sort of turned my back on the law. And I was like, I can go back to law whenever I want to. First mistake. I should have really kept some part of my life affiliated with the law if I knew that's what I wanted to do long term. So I work in business. I was working with some Fortune 500 companies, sales, marketing, that sort of thing, nothing related to the law. really. And then my husband and I, we ended up in the state of Washington. I did start to have children, and then I said, all right, now's the time. I want to transition. I can't do this globe trotting around the world sort of thing. I want to be a family person, and I want to start this whole law thing or whatever. But I didn't do that was my idea. Then I had the 2 kids, and we moved when my second child was like 4 or 5 months old. We moved to the state of Utah for his work. And there I went on inactive status with my license at the state of Washington. Okay. And then after 3 years, I said, whatever, I'm just throwing money out here. I don't see when I'm ever going to get back to law. That's how bad it was. And then finally I said, it's now or never. I'm getting older. You know, the kids are starting to go to school. So this is maybe 5 or 6 years later. Kids are starting to go to school. I really want to throw myself at this. But it was 2008 of all times, right? So that was,
Oh man.
yeah, that was crazy. And I took a step back and I was like, okay, I can be patient. We can really work on this. And I looked at my resume. I was admitted to practice in the state of Utah in 2012. So I took that's why I was like 9 years. It took a while, but I finally was just like, it's now or never. Get in there, do this, you know, put up or shut up. And so and that was with the help and the strength and the support of some really great people here in Utah. I don't have any family background in Utah, but you know, it was dive in. Even one of the current board members of UCLI is one of the people, she babysat for me and was like, go to the library and study, right? This isn't something you could just do, because I was trying to squeeze it into all these other things. Being the perfect mom, you know, volunteering everywhere, doing church stuff, you name it. I volunteered for my community, HOA board, blah, 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 right? So it's time to bring it back down. That's sort of my path. And before you start the next question, I just want to say thank you to UCLI, right? Because this is all new. I didn't have any of these resources. UCLI wasn't around. This conversation wasn't around. And when I started interviewing and going into things, I mean, people still thought they could ask you about your age and all these other things that, you know, it's finally clear it's a no-no, right? You can't do. So I just want to make sure I put out there, Melinda, Cherise, everybody, you guys are awesome. I love what this organization is doing for people. Even having this conversation is amazing. It wasn't something that I had way back when. Like I was trying to like skirt my way in there, pretend I was cute and young, just keep dates off my resume and just go for it. Right?
Yes. Yeah, because you're just worried that people are going to take one look at you and go, oh, you're not traditional. Let's go with a more traditional candidate, because obviously that candidate, I don't know, has some benefit that a non-traditional candidate won't have. Which kind of leads into the question for you. What obstacles and what benefits should be considered entering the legal field from an extended break?
So one thing I remember telling myself when I finally got admitted and finally started working, I was like, I would never do this again. I'm not going to allow anyone else to do it the way I did it. It's just too hard. You know, keep your foot in the door with licensing. I had to do the entire bar thing all over again, just finding recommendations, all that stuff. It was crazy. I was just like, what? You know, from 10 years, are you like crazy? So that part alone, you know, I think everyone benefit wise has a leg up. If you start late and then go to law school and come right out and, you know, jump yourself into the field, that I think is better than what I did. What I found here in Utah is that there are huge benefits. It's a really close-knit community. The legal field, even though it's growing, it's small. Everybody knows each other and they are happy to hire alums, Utah alums. I say UT and they're like, that's Texas, not, you know, Utah State or whatever. So benefit, some obstacles for me, I did find there was this there was this inner circle that I was just never a part of. I wasn't part of the UT community as far as recruiting or just looking things up. You know, I always felt like an outsider, and people would sort of look at me like, oh, you know, good for you. You went to these places. Well, it doesn't matter to us, right? That you went to UT Austin or that sort of thing. So, but it was, that's fine, right? I worked on my strengths, right? As far as, and I think both Pam and Haiti said this, right? Just be yourself. I went into these interviews. I tried to build rapport, instant rapport with people, you know, just, I was a salesperson. I was a marketing person. So I wasn't afraid of being in all these interviews, even if I had to do 100. It's just like, just talk to them and stay grounded, right? I did find that people, you know, to them, they would just, most people recruiting, they're just looking to put you in a box, as far, not a bad box, but they're like, how could we fit it in? Okay, and they would say it up front. Oh, well, you know, you're not shareholder path, but you could be of counsel, or you could do this or do that or whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't say my current role is I'm corporate counsel at a tech firm. And so when I just finished a round of hiring, and we look for a lot of things, but we look for experience is important. You know, I remember being in law school and thinking, oh, maybe one day I can be in-house counsel. And I thought that meant, you know, after you've practiced forever and you had the best grades and all that other stuff. And it's not true. What we've been looking for are people who have real life experiences, you know, in-house counsel, and the roles that I was hiring for, it's in our legal department, contracts manager, but you're not required to have a law degree. However, more than half of the people have law degrees or whatever, but maybe they didn't want to continue the law path or whatever. There's just, like someone else said, I think it was Pam, there's a place, I think it was you, Sharice, there's a place for everyone. So there is a benefit. I think anyone who's thinking about law school right now, go to law school, take advantage of all the resources. Because we're in Utah, I find it doesn't seem so uncommon to have a family already, you know. I mean, half the people at BYU they're married with kids, and both of them are plowing through school together. So don't necessarily consider that a downplay. I think it was a little harder for me, a little more difficult, because I didn't have those connections. I was trying to dive back in. There were other people I met who, you know, always worked part-time, or at least once a week, you know, kept one foot in the door. So if you can, keep a foot in the door, and play up your expertise. So I had sales and marketing, and when I go to interviews, I'm like, that's great. You know, I'd love to meet your corporate clients, or, you know, maybe there are other connections, or, you know, so I saw it as there were good things and benefits and negatives, but you play to the strengths of whatever you have, and don't let that discourage you. Right now I work on contracts, and one thing I never, you know, it's amazing. I'm in negotiations. We had one just the other day. There are 10 attorneys from the other side. They have their privacy attorney, their in-house attorney, their, you know, just a long list of attorneys, and me. And I don't let that discourage me, right? You know, at the end of the day, I'm still doing what I need to do. I'm still, when I was a litigator, I was still winning cases, you know, and you have to think about it. You come out, my first year as a litigator, I was up against other first years, but yes, maybe they were 25 or 30 or whatever. And I'm not going to say my age, but I was like, hey, I'm here to study the law and kick butt. Let's go. You know, so I was just ready for it. Just happy to be in a position.
Can you talk a little bit, we're out of time, but we're just going to go into the Q&A time, because I really want to hear an answer to this question from you. You're a person of color. What challenges or what benefits exist for candidates from underrepresented groups in Utah specifically?
Yes. Well, I found, so it's funny, it goes both ways. I found the color sometimes was a benefit because it's Utah and they needed people of color. You know, they're begging and dying for people of color. And a lot of times based on their client requests for people of color.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
end of it, I got more discrimination for gender discrimination and probably and age discrimination. I remember one interview, literally the person, we're talking, great rapport, you know, going back and forth, all these other things. And the guy was like, wait a minute, you know, don't tell me you're 40. And I know my facial expression probably said more than anything. He was like, don't answer that. Okay. You know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, are you serious? Right. So I remember another interview, and I know this for a fact, and because the person who referred me to the job opening was aware of who got hired and why that person was hired. And, you know, they're like, well, we gave it, it was just down to 2 people, and they gave it to the guy, and they were like, the guy needs it more than she does, right? She's married and she'll be fine, right? She's fine. She'll be taken care of. Her husband will do that work, right? And this guy over here, who knows who he was or whatever, who knows if he even had a family, whatever, but they gave it was like a toss up, and they were like, we're going to lean on the side of the male. So I found in interviewing now where the person of color interaction comes in, it's not with the employer, it's with the other candidates, right? Who look at you and they're like, oh, well, we know why you're here or why you're on the short list or things like that. And those are the things you just have to just block it and move on, right? You go to your support team and just whatever, right? You know what you've done. And you don't know this until afterwards, but my reputation speaks for itself. My record speaks for itself. You know, everything that I've done and what I've built in the law comes from just relying on yourself and your good support network. Just like Pam and Haiti said, kick the rest of the curb. You don't have time for that space. Just move on. So really, the racism and the like cutthroat stuff comes from other people who would like to, you know, shine a light on that. But the employers, they know what they need, what they want, and they know what their clients are asking for.
Yeah. That's such an interesting perspective. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we're going to turn to Kristen and Marshall. We're going to talk to you guys together. So I'm just going to kind of throw the questions at you guys, and hopefully you guys can share a little bit about your experience as a married couple going through law school 1 year apart. But go ahead and share your story, you guys, and then I'll start asking questions. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, Marshall, you are still on mute, so I'll just avoid that whole thing. Hi. Do you want to start us off?
I'll start out just because I went to law school first. I had worked mainly as a journalist, and I was a veteran as well. And if anybody has any questions about that, I can answer that because I did use the GI Bill to help with law school. But so kind of later in life, mid-career, I decided that there were a lot of problems with journalism that I didn't like. Wanted to be more directly engaged, and law school is a way to do that. So I went, and the first year I realized that I was doing okay, but I thought Kristen would really be crushing it. She would be so much better in all these classes than I am, that I tried to convince her to go to law school, and it wasn't really working. So I'm not a very good lawyer. I couldn't even convince Kristen to go to law school with me. Do you want to tell the next part?
Hilarious. He's an excellent lawyer, but he's not very persuasive sometimes as a husband, but you know. Yeah, I definitely always wanted to go to law school. And so as an undergrad, I bought an LSAT book and I started studying. But I mean, Haiti talked a bit about self-doubt, but I grew up with a dad as a lawyer. I worked at a law firm, and I had never seen a female lawyer. I'd never met a female lawyer, and I'd never seen a lawyer, you know, who was like raising kids and practicing law at the same time. And I, without like a stay-at-home spouse to take care of everything. And so I just couldn't figure out in my brain how I could make that work, because I knew that I wanted to have kids soon after. And so I did a different graduate program, and I was working as an adjunct professor at Utah State when Marshall, totally out of the blue, 10 years later, we had a little, 2 little kids, and he's like, I think I'm going to try law school. And I was like, that was my thing. And so it was helpful because it helped me like re-examine whether I was still interested in it. And I was, but he tried to convince me to go after he started, and I still had that same self-doubt. I just couldn't see how I could make that work with 2 little kids at home. And it wasn't until one of his law professors, her name's Marissa Baradaran, but she invited us over for dinner, and she like had 2 little kids, and she just told me like, you can do this. And you should do this, like do it. And she just encouraged me during that dinner to go for it. And it was just seeing that she had done it, she succeeded, and she was kicking butt at what she was doing. And just seeing that example and having her tell me point blank that I could do it was like the motivation that I needed. And so that's where I ended up applying and attending law school 1 year after Marshall. And so if anyone here or anyone watching this later in the recording need somebody to tell you that you can do it, I am no Marissa Baradaran because she is like the most amazing person, but I can tell you that it is possible. And so, if your situations are similar to mine with 2 little kids and a husband with a career, like it is possible, and you can do it too if that is what you're feeling pulled to do.
Yeah, thank you. There's this theme of tuning out negative voices and listening to positive voices that I want to come back to in our Q&A time. But I love that part of the story. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the questions for you 2. What opportunities and what challenges did going to law school as a married couple present to you 2?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, do you want to go first?
You can go ahead.
Okay. I think there were definitely pros and cons to our situation. One thing that I think was that we really had to be very deliberate and careful about the opportunities that we were able to take and participate in, because like if Marshall was going to, go out of state for an internship one summer, that meant I wouldn't necessarily be able to do the same thing. And so we kind of had to plan that out and take turns. When we actually started law school, and if anyone is going with a spouse, like my whole thing, just because of the way that I was raised and the way that I was thinking about my career was, oh, I'll just defer to Marshall. I won't focus on grades or anything, and I'll just kind of do like a volunteer lawyer job after. He was
Well,
not.
that's very cute of you.
What?
That's very cute of you.
Yeah, it took pressure on me to go in with that attitude. And Marshall's like, no way, like that's not going to happen, because I'm scared that like later on I would resent him or something. But so we actually like that, he corrected that imbalance that I tried to impose, and we both took really important opportunities. Like one summer I was able to fly to Africa, leave my kids, leave my husband, and work for the United Nations Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, do an internship there. And it was incredible to just have like 2 little kids at home and be able to go have that experience. And it was because of law school and a supportive spouse that allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
And he understood the pressures that we were under. Like, so I was able to kind of take these opportunities, and he understood why it was important for me for my, legal development and stuff like that. So that was a really helpful component of having a spouse in law school with me.
That's awesome.
And
Marshall.
Well, yeah, and I just going along with what Kristen said, I think one of the advantages to that too is we've been able to carry that on into our professional lives as well. So, Kristen did an amazing job and got into a big firm. And so I took a clerkship, and then we kind of, we've been able to trade back and forth as the opportunities have arisen. So I spent some time as a stay-at-home dad as an attorney, and, and there's always some concern doing that. That's going to negatively impact your career, but I haven't noticed anything in that regard at all. And it's just been great to be able to pivot and trade off and tag team a lot of these problems.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I will say one other advantage that goes along with what Marshall just said is like the fact that our legal networks, our professional networks are kind of doubled, because he went into criminal law, I went into civil law at first, And it was like, we just got to meet all these different people in the law and all these different lawyers with different kinds of jobs that we wouldn't have been able to meet otherwise, if not for both of us having that overlap in our career.
So how did your previous careers and life experiences help you succeed as law students and new attorneys?
You know, one thing I would say about that, and a couple of other people have mentioned this, I was laughing the other day, sort of to myself, in that I feel like no experience I ever had previous to law school has been wasted in the law. The law is so diverse. There's so many things going on. There is every little bit of your experience as a stay-at-home dad, as a veteran. I was a journalist. I worked in an advertising agency for a while. All of these things were important and were useful at different times because the law is just so diverse.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Kristen.
Yeah, I agree. I think what everybody has said about that is true. I've been on the other side. After I graduated, I started on our firm's hiring committee. So I was able to kind of, you know, review resumes, interview, vet people. And I always was impressed with the people who went to law school a little bit later and had just this wealth of information and life experience that they could draw on. I always felt that there was a true benefit there and a real value to that when they started at our firm. So I agree with that. I think that a lot of firms see that as an asset, see that as a benefit if you're able to communicate why those things can be helpful for you in your legal career.
Yeah. I feel like I had a similar experience interviewing for clerkships. People, you know, the judges wanted to hear the things that made you unique and to really understand who you were as a person. And I think being a little bit older helps you to have a little bit more to say about what makes you unique as a person. And so I think that might actually be a little bit of a benefit ultimately. Okay, we're going to move on to Suzette. So Suzette, I would love to hear your story and hear what made you an unconventional law student for our audience.
Great. Well, there were several things that made me an unconventional law student. First of all,
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. That makes you an unconventional everything, right?
Right.
I mean, like, you're in the 8-kid club.
Yes. That's
amazing.
Large family. Also, I started when I was in my early 40s. So, and that was a huge step to take. I had been a stay-at-home mom, and then I was divorced and was a single mom, and went into a career that I could support myself and my children with, which was corporate communications, which was great. I had a lot of people telling me, why would you even consider going to law school? You've got a great career. That means 3 years where you're losing income. And then when you start out as an attorney, you're going to earn less than what you're currently earning. And there were so many reasons and so many people telling me not to do it. But yet I was listening to my intuition, and it was, you need to go to law school. This is what you should be doing. And so also, you know, being a child of immigrants, I didn't grow up knowing attorneys. We didn't do the country club thing. We were low to middle class. And so it was all pretty new to me. But I felt really strongly that that was the path and the course that I should take for myself and for my family, and to have a fulfilling career. And every day since, you know, I've been so grateful that I made that decision. It's been a great career, and it's been a great pathway for me and my family.
What do you do right now as an attorney?
So right now I'm with a small firm, and we work with a lot of small businesses and startups. It's really great. We're also a firm that's really unique because the two business partners that started the firm decided they wanted to go away from the traditional law firm. So they said, we're going to do things the way we want to do it and practice the way we want to. And it's been great. So we were remote before COVID ever happened. So we were already practicing remotely. We were already integrated and everything. One of the challenges that came with that, which we'll get to as far as benefits of being an older person going to law school and starting a career, is that I had to build my own book of business. So I wasn't walking into a law firm that already said, here are the clients. work
Yeah.
with these clients. It was kind of build your own book. And the fact that, you're an older person, that you've got life experience, you have a lot of people in your network, you've built a lot of relationships, it made it doable within that first year to have built your own book of business and to be able to have a thriving career in the law that way.
Awesome. What are some of the common traps to avoid that you found?
I would say it's really important, and some of these things have been brought up already by the other panelists, but it's really important to not compare yourself to others, because even starting law school, you're not going to be the same, and that's okay, because the law provides so many different opportunities for so many different people. You will find your own path, you will have your own journey, and everyone fits in and everyone belongs. And so if you can get away from the trap of comparing yourself to others, because I decided, okay, I'm going to do law school my way, which is I'm still going to be a 100% full-time mom to my kids. And that means that I'm getting up at 5 a.m. driving the carpool to, drill team practice. And then I'm at, the basketball game until 10 p.m. and whatever else I needed to do. So it was important to not compare myself to the other law students who were able to stay on campus until really late and study groups, or they were able to participate in, mock trials or anything else. I just had to realize, I can't compare myself to the way they're approaching law school. I have to approach it the way that's right for me. And for me, it was, I will be at the law school during the hours where my kids are in school. And then the rest of the time I'm at home with them. And if that means I'm up at 2 a.m., reading case law, that's what I'm doing. So
yeah,
that was important, to not compare myself. But also another trap to avoid, I would say, is to not limit yourself. During law school, there were opportunities that I felt like were important for me to participate in. And some of those were doing the international externships. And even though I was a mom and I had kids, I decided, no, this is what I feel like is right for us. And so I did that both summers. And there were those who would, try to limit that and say, no, you really should go this route and be working for a firm that can hire you afterwards. And if you do these externships, it's not really going to lead to, a full-time job. Again, don't limit yourself. Those externships actually prepared me for another job that I had out of law school, which was working with World Trade Center in international business. And that was very fulfilling and great part of my career. So don't limit yourself. Don't allow others to tell you what your path should be, and just really carve out your own career and what that means for you.
I love it. So you spoke a little bit about some of the benefits of entering the legal field at an older age, being able to create your own book of business. And, but are there any others that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I think that being, at this stage of life has helped me be able to deal with. So my first job out of law school was I would call it a very high stress job. It was in the governor's office, and the governor's office always has a lot going on with regard to, the state works 24/7. So there's a lot of high stress situations. From that to now working with clients, very stressful situations in their lives and with their businesses, and you're talking about a lot of money, a lot of big decisions. I think that being at this stage of life, you've learned that you can work through everything, and then you can help your clients work through everything. And I think that ability to just kind of de-stress, de-escalate situations really helps them the most. It helps you in your career, but it also helps your clients. And so I think that's a huge benefit of having life experience, that you realize, it's all going to work out, let's forge a path, and it will be good. The other thing I would say is the time that I can now utilize to create the career that I want as my kids have gotten older. And it's allowed me to choose different paths in my career that maybe I wouldn't have chosen at an earlier, younger age because of the ages of my kids. So I see that as a benefit now that, now it allows me to carve out whatever I want. And if that includes travel in my career, if that includes, late hours, whatever it is, it's doable now at this stage of life.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. We are now going to turn over the time to a Q&A. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to hear, from everyone what they hope to share and what they thought would be relevant for people. We've got some questions that have come in. And Caitlin, I don't know if you want to ask those questions or if you want me to ask some of the questions.
I'm happy to just share a couple that have come in already.
Sure. Yeah.
The first one is from Stacy, who says, I've been advised not to work at all during my first year of law school. Did any of you work part-time while you were law students, or second or third years?
I'll share that I did. I actually worked all 3 years of law school, in part-time in law, in part because my learning style is to apply. And the first year of law school in particular is very doctrinal, very lecture-based. And then you get to 16 weeks later and you take a 4-hour final exam and try to spit it all out in a coherent way to pass your class. And I'm much more about give me a project and let me figure out how to apply what I'm learning to it. And so within about 4 weeks of law school, I recognized I was going to have a challenge this first year if I didn't find some ways to apply the law. And by some miracle, I think Salt Lake County took a look at me and decided that, yes, sure, we'll give this first year who hasn't even been taught how to do a legal memo yet, an opportunity to come work with us part-time. And so that was very invaluable for me. And it also gave me an opportunity to be encouraged when law school gets tough. There will be periods of time in law school when you're dragging, you're beating yourself up because you feel like you're not grasping some of the legal concepts as fast as you might or should be. And the team at Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office was always so encouraging with me. And so I treated that as valuable investment of time and resources. It does, however, take away from study time. And so if your learning mechanism is doing well within the environment of a 1L year where it's very doctrinal, I would recommend that you not work if you don't have to. Focus on getting the best grades you can, particularly in that first semester, because when you do go into the OCI process or you start looking for job opportunities, sadly, the reality is your first semester and your first year grades are weighed pretty heavily. The good news is that as a non-traditional student, someone who's coming with other experience, that is offset very quickly. And that's why I didn't have any challenges getting both summer opportunities and a job offer before I graduated. So you just have to weigh that for yourself.
And I worked a bit, but it was for totally different reasons. It was just because we needed the money. And so I actually, I was an adjunct professor before law school, and they offered to have me teach classes over the summer, my 1L year and all the summers. And I, was told you need to do a legal internship for your resume. And I was like, I'm good at, Marshall was in DC doing an internship for his law thing. And I was like, nope, I'm going to just go make a lot of money this summer so we can minimize our student loans. And so I tried to get a little bit of legal experience, but it was mostly just to try to minimize debt, because I think it's important to just realize that when you go to law school when you're 22, you have a lot longer to pay off that debt. And so when you're going to graduate mid 30s or 40s or 50s, you do need to consider the fact that you just may have to carry that debt into an older age than a lot of people who can pay it off before I even started law school. So I don't regret that decision for just deciding to work for money. But my law school did limit how much you could work, or if you could work at all your 1L year. So I think sometimes law schools impose some restrictions on that, where you really don't have the option to do much work during the semester.
So if I could just chime in for a second, I think so I don't know if you're asking, so you're talking about working during the first year, like during the 1L year, that would not have been possible for me with my 2 kids and not having any family around. Law school took up all of my time that wasn't with my kids. But depending on how well you do your grades, you can get a good paying job during the summer if you work at a firm. So that's something to consider if that's something you're interested in. I think it might be worth more. So first, I think the first investment you make is you really study hard for the LSAT so that you can try to get a scholarship. you know, that if you think about studying for the LSAT like a part-time job and it gives you a scholarship, right? That scholarship is going to be worth more than a like, just kind of do the math, right? If you can do that, that minimizes what you have to pay to attend, right? But also for me, you know, it made more sense to do as best as I could in school to then, and I didn't want to work at a firm. That wasn't ever attractive to me, but I always got paid jobs during the summer, and those are always available no matter where you rank, what you rank. The higher paying jobs in the summer are usually reserved for those who did really well and go to those firms. But I got paid jobs all summers, but during school, I did not work any of my 1L, 2L, or 3 because I just couldn't with kids. So it's possible to do it without working. I mean, you will incur debt, and that's another conversation, I guess, right?
That was actually another question that came in, and I'll ask that now, and kind of you can answer either of the previous questions. But for those who did incur debt, have you seen a good return on your investment? So again, any other?
I was just going to add to what Haiti said, which is if you just focus on grades, your 1L year or your 2L year, she's absolutely right. If you work at a big firm, big firms pay. When we were there, it was like, you know, close to $10,000 a month because they're paying you basically what you would earn as almost a first year associate. And so you can really, if you focus on grades and not work during the semester, you can really offset the costs of your tuition if you decide to do kind of a big firm job over the summer. I think that's a really good point. And then really quickly, and then I'll stop talking because I know I've chimed in twice now. Just that I saw a big return on investment. And then, so it was totally worth it financially for me to incur that debt in my 30s and then start at a firm. But there are also like public interest jobs. And there is the student loan repayment that I know that a lot of my classmates have done. And so there are other kinds of options depending on the type of job you go to where you can help minimize the burden of the debt long term.
And I will not chime in again, sorry, but I will say I did not go work for a large firm. I actually started a solo practice right out of law school, and they were like, "You're crazy. What are you doing?" And I said, "There's no, the job I want. I mean, it's not there." But I've never applied for a job. I was recruited by a firm because one of the cases I had when I was a solo practitioner, the attorney who I was up against was leaving her firm, and she told her partners, "You need to go hire this girl." They recruited me. They came to me. My second firm was also someone that I met in court, and they recruited me. And I've worked for small firms, and now I'm back to working just for myself. And you can make a really good living doing that too, right? So it depends on how much sacrifice and discipline you have in pay back student loans and things like that in your lifestyle, but you absolutely have a better earning potential, no matter sort of what path. Obviously, if you go work for a nonprofit, then your option is stay in long term and then hope to get some student loan forgiveness, but
sounds like I'm probably the oldest here in terms of like going to law school initially and taking on that student debt. So I will speak to the return on investment specifically to someone who in 20 years has retirement, right? I don't have the 40-year period to pay back loans. And I am fortunate to have the job opportunity that will allow me to pay those loans off in 4.5 years. And that's huge for me. And that's difficult. It means our family has to sacrifice in other ways. So it will be worth the return on investment. My salary is twice what it was when I worked in corporate communications, almost twice what I made. So it all depends on what your goals are. But as I said, for some of us, this is an investment. So I don't even think of it as debt. It is an investment that I've made, and I'll make that payment every month until it's paid and be glad that I did so.
Thanks for those answers, everybody. A couple people had a similar question, which is for people who maybe have a year before they start applying, who are preparing to take the LSAT and apply to law school, what types of opportunities can they seek out to put on their applications and hopefully improve their prospects? People say that, extracurricular activities don't matter as much as GPA and LSAT scores, but what types of things do make you more attractive for an admissions board?
I just wanted to say, I saw this in the chat. There are a couple of things. I think there should be a distinction, right? Like for med school, you hear that a lot of people will go out and volunteer and do all these things around kids or whatever, right? There's sort of these preconceived sort of type of jobs or positions that you want to take on before you apply to med school that everyone does. And in law, I don't believe there's one like that. I know of a very successful attorney here in Utah. And before he went to law school, he worked on a fishing ship out in Alaska, and he was like a ski champion and all these other, nothing related to the law. I think it really is important in discussing why you take a position before you apply to law school. The fishing thing, it paid a lot of money, and he really wanted to make sure he had the money to pay for law school wherever law school was in advance. No one's going to frown at that, right? So I think you just have to be able to talk about why you took a certain position, why you pursued a certain position, and be able to spell that out to someone who's interviewing for you, or when you put that on your application for law school. I think that's more important than trying to find the right type of job, right, to put on the resume in the hopes that someone recruiting selects you. I think now so this is how old we are, right? My kids are applying to colleges and things like that. And as they're looking for resumes, and as we're listening to these admission counselors, they've seen it all. They want to know why you're doing what you're doing, and want to make sure you're not just putting things on a piece of paper for their rubber stamp, because they're tired of that. So I wouldn't focus on trying to find what the recruiters want or the admissions counselors want. You need to focus on, what is best for you in your situation, or why did you pursue this, or, this is my other interest. It could be you are a good skier and you wanted to go with that all the way until, to see how far you could go with it until you could become a gold medalist or whatever before you went to law school. I think that's more credible than trying to get something for their rubber stamp.
I agree. I think that answer highlights how valuable your personal, unique experience is to your law degree. Because I think what admissions committees are looking for is an insightful human, someone who has learned from their life experience and can learn moving forward and apply their life experience to the law, to whatever it is that they're doing. And so I think you just, as some of the panelists said before, be yourself. And when you write your personal statement, try to put as much of yourself into your personal statement as possible. I used to teach personal statement writing at BYU, and I would teach students how to tell their stories and how to hone in on what unique aspect of their story best highlighted their ability to learn from their life. And I think that is the important thing, is to take your life and the material that you've been given and to just highlight how you've learned from what, the hand that you've been dealt and how you've made the most of it. And so I think that's right, that there's not like this one path. Like my friend who went to med school, like volunteered for years, removing eyeballs from like cadavers and people who'd recently passed away, and trying to get some medical experience, proving that he could be a surgeon. But I don't think that there's that same thing in the law. I really think that what they want to see is you being the awesome human that you are.
I'll add one point to that. They want to also see that you bring some diversity to their classrooms in whatever form that is. Could be your experience. It obviously could be things like ethnicity and culture. It can be the challenges you faced in life. And so those things that you think might not be your best advantage probably are for your law school application.
Thanks for those responses. Another question came in about the importance of the ranking of the law school that you attend and how important that is in employment opportunities.
I think that there's a there's a pretty good answer to this across the board. I think rank, and this is what I heard from people before I went to law school, it's what I've heard after I went to law school. I think rank of law school is not as important as the geographical area that you want to practice. So where do you want to practice and go there? I think that Zakiyah had that experience where she went to an awesome law school and she came to Utah, and people said, well, that's great that you went to this awesome, really amazing law school. We've got this social network here already that you're going to have to try to infiltrate. And so I don't know if you want to talk about that, Zakiyah, a little bit more.
That's exactly how I felt. It is, you know, if you want, you have to decide where you want to practice, just like you said. And you know, I find in very small areas that rank matters, right? You know, if you want to become a senator, state senator, or, you know, or you want to stay in Washington, DC, and, you know, very small area, become a politician, all that stuff, sure, you probably want to go to the highest ranking. If you want to be, you know, it's proven you don't have to. If you want to become a US Supreme Court justice, certainly the highest ranking. But everything else, I think everything else, it's geography. It's who you know, it's where you want to practice after law school. So what the other part of it, I found, it goes back to money, monetarily. So if you want to stay in Utah, why go to another school? It's the Utah schools are a lot cheaper. I wish I knew about these schools. You know, I would have applied here. So that's a big basis. That should be a big part of your decision when you talk about rank, talk about geography, talk about money. And then the other part of it is also, hey, what about if it's not the location, it's the type of law, right? And they're just a few areas, you know, like MIT or something, you know, there are a few places where you want to go to that once you graduate from that law school, it is understood you are going into work for the UN or whatever else. But for the most part, you want to do what's best for you and your family. And the rank helps. Oh, I'm sorry. What I was going to say also is money. So I looked at both undergrad and grad school. I would always look and see how much money they offered the average candidate, because I needed money, right? So sometimes the highest ranking schools have a bigger foundation of money, but then you have to offset that with, hey, if the Utah education only costs $10,000 and the Harvard education costs $100,000, and they're going to give me 50%, then who cares? I'm still going to go with the Utah school. So I think,
especially if you decide to stay in Utah.
Yes.
Like if you're coming back to Utah, then
especially
yeah,
if you're in Utah. So I look at three things together: amount of money they give, where I want to live after graduation, and the rank. You know, that way.
And I would say, just from like a big law perspective, I think that there are kind of doors open if you went to the top 3 to 5 law schools. I think that's going to open a ton of doors in Utah as well. But in terms of rank and like choosing between the 2 Utah schools, I don't think rank matters in that regard, because people have really strong opinions about each school. They're both really well respected. And I never heard anyone say, well, but this Utah school is ranked a little bit higher, so let's go with this candidate. Never. So I think between Utah schools or anything outside of like the big top 1 to 3 to 5 law schools out there, it's not going to be a big indicator or a determining factor of you getting a job.
Charisse, can I jump in here for just a minute? I would just add to the things that Zakiyah said. There's one other area that where I think ranking does matter, and maybe it's not relevant for this group, but if you want to be a professor, a law school professor, the rank of the school does matter. There's opportunities to become a professor and get into academia. If you're in a law school that's lower than the top 10, but those are few and far between, and it is much harder to break through that into that particular field if you're not in the top 10. And as Kristen said, really in the top 5 is kind of what's expected.
And your rank as a student, it is more valuable than the rank of the school. So when you're going to apply to places, yes, and I think Kristen brought up a good point. When you look at different things, applications, especially like in tech, they all say the same, but it's a joke. They all say, oh, from a top 10 law firm or from a top 10 school or whatever, but everyone applies anyway. So I would not worry about rank.
I have one thing too. It's really important, particularly as a non-traditional student, if you're juggling other challenges in life, that you find a school that's a good fit for you. So when I was touring the country to look for law schools that I might attend, I actually walked out of one of the tours halfway through the day because not a single person on that tour, not a student, not a faculty member, not even the admissions team could fathom that I would be a student. They kept referring to me as the parent, like, oh, well, where's your son or daughter? Are they thinking of coming here? And I realized I did not want to be in an environment where I would be such an oddity that I would have to constantly explain to them that, no, I'm the student. And thankfully here in Utah, both schools, this is true, that's not the environment. It's a very encouraging environment for non-traditional students. So definitely take that into consideration.
Thanks, everybody. I think we have time for one last question. This question comes from Jason, and it's for you, Marshall. Jason's also a stay-at-home dad and veteran, and he says, I'm almost finished with my undergraduate, and I'm worried about the GI Bill and how much it will cover. Could you explain briefly how your experience with the GI Bill worked and how being a veteran may have helped? And then if anyone else would like to put responses in the chat about best LSAT prep courses or what your careers are in now, that will answer the remaining questions that came in.
Yes, and I responded to Jason by direct message, so I'll just quickly say that I couldn't quite remember how the GI Bill worked because it's very complicated. And but that's an interesting thing to remember, is that I didn't even think it applied until someone told me, hey, you can actually use this for a graduate degree. And so there's a lot of funding out there if you pay attention. That's just one example.
Yeah, my husband is also military, was former military when we were in undergrad, and the GI Bill, he just got a check. I don't know, he just got a check every month until it ran out. And so he used it for undergrad, but it did help, definitely. Like Marshall said, it might be complicated. I have no idea, I didn't sign up for it.
Thanks so much, Charisse. If you'd like to wrap it up for us, I think we're at a point where we could do that now.
Okay, so thank you for attending today. We want to invite you to register for the Utah Center for Legal Inclusion's mailing list and to follow UCLI on social media to stay updated with resources, scholarship opportunities, and events for historically underrepresented law students and legal professionals. Those links are going to be put in the chat there. I think they're already there. And then everyone who registered today is also going to get an email with the links to all the speakers' LinkedIn profiles. And hopefully those links as well will be included in that, because I think they'll disappear as soon as the Zoom meeting's over. And please just feel free to reach out to UCLI and get support and advice. And we wish you the best in your legal career and really encourage you, if this is a dream of yours, to make it happen. We hope that our experiences today have shown you that it can happen for you in whatever life circumstance you are in, kids, no kids, divorced, wherever you are, you can do it. So we encourage you to do that. And we look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn and to being able to mentor you in whatever way possible. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for putting this together. Caitlin, it's been awesome.
Thank you.